Welcome back. Regular viewers will know that we've been tracking the Iran media story here at the Listening Post. We've reported on the various steps the authorities there have taken to limit the influence that the West and Western media are having on Iranians. We're going to rewind the video a little, first back to 1953, then 1979, in order to provide this breaking story with something that a lot of news coverage lacks, a little context. More than half a century ago, there was a coup in Iran, a change of power that was orchestrated in Washington, and the media were a big part of what happened. The Listening Post's Salah Qadar now on Iran and media manipulation, both then and now.
So many restrictions on reporters, foreign reporters, international reporters inside Iran.
No SMS, no access to the internet, no text messages to give us information of where the protests are happening.
Iran. Week 3 since the disputed presidential election.
The Iranian government is continuing to block some communications out of the country.
As the crackdown on opposition protesters continued, Iranian state television trotted out some of its citizens who made it clear exactly who was to blame for the unrest.
I was influenced by Voice of America, Persian TV, and BBC.
While these TV confessions look suspiciously staged, the idea of foreign media meddling in their affairs is not new for Iranians. The year was 1953. The Iranian press was manipulated by US and British intelligence to help topple the country's democratically elected government, led by Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh.
Nobody really knows how many reporters were on the payroll, although we did have an authoritative estimate that at least 70% of the newspapers in Tehran were directly or indirectly being bribed by the CIA.
I would say it's the landmark event in Iranian 20th century history. For most Iranians, the formative crisis that basically determines how Iranians look at history, contemporary history, international relations, is through the prism of 1953.
Prime Minister Mossadegh had just nationalized Iran's oil, wrenching it away from British control. The Americans needed convincing to join a coup effort, so the British played the Red Scare card. It was the early days of the Cold War, and that had an impact on the Americans, who feared Iran was ready for a communist takeover.
Any direct military intervention by the United States would risk a counter intervention from the Soviet Union, and that could spiral out of control into a nuclear holocaust. So the United States was looking for another way to shape events in foreign countries.
The Americans came up with a new, more subtle model for regime change, aimed at swaying public opinion and reinstalling a puppet monarch, the Shah of Iran. It came to be known as the world's first media coup.
The strategy of the CIA and the British was to actually bribe both politicians and the media to bring down the Mossadegh's government.
Back in '53, things were a lot less sophisticated in terms of media than they are today. But one could work through radio, one could work through some of the existing traditional forms of communications. It was sort of classic CIA technique, including getting stories out through the press, planting stories in parts of the media you might control or influence.
Operation Ajax, as the coup was called, was run by Kermit Roosevelt, a CIA operative in the Middle East. Roosevelt wrote a detailed report on what he had done, a document that was declassified in 2000. He described the anti-Mossadegh newspaper articles as grey propaganda, referred to the political cartoons that demonized the Prime Minister, and he revealed that it wasn't just Iranian journalists who were behind the news articles.
Many of the articles that were published in the Iranian press were actually written in Washington by the CIA, translated and sent to Iran, and then the Iranian journalists just put it in their paper.
There was almost no slander you could imagine against Mossadegh that did not appear at some point in some of these newspapers. These newspapers would churn out articles day after day about Mossadegh being a spy, a homosexual, a Jew, weak, corrupt, anything that they thought would undermine his image.
It wasn't just the Americans using the media to manipulate Iranian politics. The British used BBC Radio to transmit a secret code to the Shah. Usually they would end their daily broadcast with the words, "It is now midnight." By changing that ever so slightly to, "It is now exactly midnight," the Shah got the message that the coup was on and Mossaddeq's days were numbered. Fast forward to 1979. 26 years of autocratic rule had made the Shah and his US allies extremely unpopular. Supporters of Ayatollah Khomeini decided to turn to another media tactic, unconventional at the time, to build support for the Shah's overthrow.
When he was agitating against the Shah, Ayatollah Khomeini would record his words onto cassettes. Those cassettes would go hand to hand in the Tehran bazaar. The cassette of Ayatollah Khomeini that disseminated his message is a precursor to the Facebook and MySpace and Twitter and SMS text messaging of today.
The Shah's rule lasted until the popular revolution that ended with the establishment of the Islamic Republic, and the impact of those audio cassettes has not been forgotten. Iranians now live with the repercussions of not just 1979, their government's restrictive media policies can be traced all the way back to 1953.
This is the reason why Iran does not allow open media, or one of the reasons. It's because they realize that the CIA will take advantage of a free press and wind up subverting it and bribing editors and newspaper reporters to weaken the regime.
I think the Iranian government may be operating under the historical recognition of how events have been manipulated in the past, so you may have some reasons to feel paranoid.
The Iranians have learnt from their history, but the world and technology have moved on since 1953. Iran today is a place where any citizen can practice journalism. Any mobile phone can get the story out. Controlling the media has never been harder.
More Global Village Voices now on Iran and the media. Of course, you can follow this story and any other we do here on the Listening Post on Twitter.
The first thing I learned about Iran was fear the Ayatollah Khomeini. Now, I don't know if the Western press are biased against Iran or manipulated by the Israel lobby, but reporting on the Islamic Republic is certainly incomplete.
The thing I've been most struck by in watching events unfold in Iran is how quickly the image of the Iranian people has changed and how it has been the people of Iran and not the Western media who've affected that change. The democratization of news sharing through sites like Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook has given the people of Iran, not their government or some large media conglomeration, their strongest tool in reshaping their image before the world.
Finally, as we told you earlier, there were few and possibly no other pop stars who had the international following of Michael Jackson. He came from Gary, Indiana, but unlike his musical peers, he wasn't just famous in his homeland or just big in Japan. Not everyone liked Michael Jackson, but he was big everywhere. That includes the Philippines, where prison inmates did a version of the Thriller dance, and India, where Thriller got the Bollywood treatment. Not even Saudi Arabia was immune to the Jackson effect. We're leaving you now with our own little mashup of some of Michael Jackson's biggest tunes and what the world did with them. And we'll see you next time here at the Listening Post.
ముందు వెనుక పరీక్ష గోలి మార్